Over the past few years, I've really shied away from these China-made handheld emulation devices, due in part to the fact that a lot of them are overpriced and underwhelming in terms of performance. In my honest opinion, I feel the best way to enjoy handheld emulation is to purchase a Bluetooth controller, or hell, even use your PS4 or Xbox One controller and run the emulation off your mobile device. I've said it plenty of times before, even a really old, under $100 cell phone is capable of running a ton of emulation. If that's not something you're interested in, I also recommend investing in or building your own Raspberry Pi handheld device. But when I first laid eyes on this console, this one seemed different. And at an asking price of about $60 US, probably closer to 80 with taxes and shipping, I figured this one was worth checking out. What's going on, guys? I'm GameheadNess, and today I'm going to be taking a look at the RK2020 handheld emulation console. What made this one stand out from the rest of the pack in my eyes is that it's priced under $100, and it claims to be capable of running Dreamcast, PS1, and N64 emulation relatively smoothly. So let's open up this box and take a look at what comes inside. Let me start out by saying that this thing took a while to get here. I had purchased it from the RK console website when it was still in pre-release, and it took close to 6 weeks. Something to consider if you're planning on purchasing this console. Inside the box, we have the RK2020 itself, a small user guide, a USB Type-C cable for charging, and a USB to micro SD card adapter. Taking a closer look at the console, it has a design that is very common among these Chinese pocket emulators. It's got a 3.5-inch IPS display, 4 face buttons, an analog stick, a D-pad, and a start and select button. It's got 4 shoulder buttons, a standard USB port, a USB Type-C port for charging, as well as a headphone jack. Over on the bottom, it's got the slot for the micro SD card. Under the hood, it's got a quad-core ARM Cortex A35, clocking in at 1.3 GHz. It's got 1 GB of RAM and a Mali G31 GPU, as well as a 2600 mAh rechargeable battery. Now before we go on, let's address the elephant of the room. The RK2020 is in fact a clone of the Odroid Go Advance. As a matter of fact, when you first power up the console, it actually says Odroid Go Advance, and it runs the same hard kernel EMU elect build that the Odroid does. Now that that's out of the way, let's see how this thing runs some games. It comes with a little over 200 games already installed, and that's what I'm going to be playing in this video. But I will do a few follow-up videos going more in depth and adding my own games to the console. Starting out, here I am playing Street Fighter 3 using the Final Burn Alpha emulator, and it seemed to run fine without any issues. Diving right into Dreamcast emulation, the game seemed to run pretty well. Maybe a few audio hiccups here and there, but for the most part, the games were very playable. There weren't too many games on the console, so I decided to try out Sonic Adventure 2 and Jet Set Radio. Although the graphics did look a bit unpolished, it was still impressive that this handheld was able to play these games rather smoothly. I will do a later video where I test out a bunch more Dreamcast titles. The console didn't have that many PS1 titles to start out with as well, but here I am running Street Fighter Alpha 3, and it ran fine. I don't have any complaints. Using the console's PSP emulator, here I am playing Dissidia, and as you guys can see, for the most part, it stays at around 30 frames per second. N64 emulation ran pretty good as well, although I did encounter similar audio hiccups the same way I did with the Sega Dreamcast emulation. But the games were perfectly playable and ran relatively smoothly on the RK2020. And the arcade classics that came with the console all ran good as well. So the RK2020. I have to admit, I'm still not a big fan of these Chinese pocket emulators, but this one actually isn't that bad. It still feels like a cheaply made hunk of plastic, but at least it emulates everything pretty well. And for an asking price of under $100 US, I feel like this thing actually is worth taking a look at. If you guys are interested in the RK2020, I'll put links to it in the description below. Until next time, this is Ness, signing out.